All right, let's get all those questions answered from the Chapter 15 review worksheet. The first three, we are changing the percent into a decimal. So when we do that, we simply divide by 100. The shortcut way is just to move the decimal, boop, boop, 2 spots to the left. Okay, so number one was 76%. It doesn't have a decimal point, but we would put it at the end for a whole number. Divide by 100, which means hop twice to the left. 1, 2, and we get 76 hundredths. We're going to do the same thing for 2 and 3. We had 6% for number 2. Again, we add the decimal point at the end, hop twice to the left. We have an empty spot here. We'd fill in a 0, and we would get 6 hundredths. Number 3. The percent started as 334%. It doesn't matter how big the percent is, we still divide by 100, moving that decimal point twice to the left. So add it at the end for whole numbers. 1, 2, and our decimal is 3.34, a 3 34 hundredths. Okay? All right, number 4, now we're doing the opposite. Now we're taking the decimal and going to a percent. So we're gonna do the opposite strategy. We're gonna multiply by 100 or hop that decimal, boop, boop, twice to the right. Okay, so number 4, 15 hundredths, multiply by 100, hop it twice to the right, and we get 15%. 5, same strategy. Take that decimal point, multiply by 100, hopping the decimal point twice to the right, and we get 124%. Number 6, last one just kind of like that. Ooh, we got a small decimal here. Okay, so it doesn't matter what the decimal looks like to begin with. We always multiply by 100 to get to a percent. Hop it twice, hop, hop, and we get 9.7%. Okay, so for numbers 7 and 8, we have to tell which number is greater, and it gives us 2 forms. The first one is presented as a fraction. The second one is presented as a percent. So this one here, I feel like you probably already know that 1/2 is equivalent to 50%, okay? And when we compare it to 52%, 52% is greater than 50%. Okay, number 8 might be a little bit trickier. We're presented with 12/5 and 245%. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I like to work in the form of percent, so I'm gonna change this to a percent, okay? So the way I'm gonna do that is I'm going to divide to get to a decimal, and then I'm gonna change it to a percent, okay? So I'm gonna work over here. We always divide the numerator by the denominator, decimal, hop, couple zeros. 5 goes into 12 twice at 10, subtract, I get 2. Bring down the 0. 5 goes into 20 4 times evenly at 20, subtract, I get 0. Okay, so this is the decimal form of 12/5. So to change it to a percent, I would multiply by 100. The quick, easy way to do that is to hop our decimal point twice to the right. If we have an empty spot, we would fill in a 0, which is equivalent here to 240%. So 12/5 is equivalent to 240%, which means 245% is the greater number. Okay, let me turn the page so I can do number 9. These are, if I'm going to be honest, my least favorite. But we still have to do our least favorite tasks. We just have to get through them and try to be positive about it. So we have 88 hundredths, we have 7/8, and we have 90%, and we have to order those 3 from least to greatest. So we need all decimals, all fractions, or all percents. And it doesn't matter what form you choose to work in. It's just a personal preference. So in this case, I think I'm gonna work in decimals. 8/800 is already a decimal. So my first job is I need to change 7/8 to a decimal. We always divide the numerator by the denominator. Decimal hop, a couple zeros. 8 goes into 7 0 times. Bring down. 8 goes into 70 8 times. 8 times 8 is 64. Subtract and I get 6. Bring down. 8 goes into 60 7 times. 7 times 8 is 56. Subtract, I get 4. Bring down. 8 goes into 40 evenly 5 times. At 40, subtract, I get 0. Okay, so 7/8 is equivalent to 875 thousandths. I'm gonna just bring down my 8/800ths to begin with. And then remember, to get a percent to a decimal, we just hop that decimal point twice to the left. And I get 0.9. I can have this 0 here if I want it, if that's easier to compare. And it asks for least to greatest. So look at the first numbers here. We know that our 8s are smaller than our 9s. So then we have to compare the next digit or the next place value. 7 is smaller than 8. So this means this is our smallest number, okay? But when we order it, let's put it back. Oopsies, sorry about that. Let's put it back in its original form. It started as 7/8, okay? Then 88 is smaller than 90, so 8/800ths is next, and then 90% would be our greatest number, okay? Maybe it would have been easier to work in percents, but it doesn't really matter, okay? All right, number 10. Number 10 specifies that we need to write and solve a proportion to answer the question. So I'm gonna start by writing the question. What percent of 60 is 18? I like to work these out on a separate sheet of paper so that I have plenty of room to work. And I know that percents are part to whole ratios. Okay, so I'm gonna put those little guiding words off to the side. And then I'm also going to remind you that the word is tells us or is a hint for what the part is, and the word of is a hint for what the whole is, okay? So then let's set up for our proportion. Proportion states 2 ratios are equal, okay? And we don't know what the percent is. It asks us what percent. So that's our missing number, but we know that percents, no matter what they are always calculated out of 100. Okay, so what percent would translate to P over 100? You could put it here in the first spot if you wanted, that'd be fine, okay? No big deal. All right, so then I see of 60. Remember, in class, we always talked about that if you had a test out of 60 points, the 60 would go here, okay? It's out of 60, that's our denominator. That's our whole, that's our total. Then the only thing we're left with is 18, which would go in the remaining spot, okay? So you can choose to solve this however you want. You can do cross products right away. You can try to find an equivalent ratio, but I see that 60 doesn't easily go into 100. Okay, so I want to remind you that we can try to look to see if we can reduce ratios, okay? So maybe you notice that these are both divisible by 6. You could have started with 2. That would have been fine. Okay, 18 divided by 6 is 3. 60 divided by 6 is 10. Drop down the second half of our proportion. You could use cross products again if you wanted. 10p equals 30. Or if you look now, we can easily find our equivalent ratio here, okay? 10 times 10 gets us to 100. Do the same thing to the numerator. 3 times 10 is 30. So p equals 30 or 30%, okay? All right, let's see. Number 11, same idea, another proportion. Let me write it out and then I can kind of break it up. It says, what number is 70% of 70? Ooh, interesting. Okay, I'm gonna set up exactly like this. So percents are part to whole ratios. Our guiding words to help us, our little cheat words are is and of. Oops, I put off. Whoopsies. Is and of, okay? And then I'm gonna set up a proportion which shows two ratios are equal. And then I'm gonna start by filling in what I know. The first thing I notice is it gives us our percent. So I'm gonna fill that in right away. No matter what the percent is, they're always out of 100 every single time, okay? Then it says of 70. Well, remember, we talked about this. If you had a test out of 70 points, 70 would go here. It would be on the bottom, the denominator. Okay, that's our whole. Then if we read the beginning of the question that says, what number is? Well, there's that little guiding word that tells us it's our part. So that's our unknown, okay? So I would start, you can use cross products and have 100x equals 4,900, or you can reduce your ratio right away. Divide these by 10, okay? And we get 7 over 10 equals, then drop down the second half of your proportion, x over 70. Now we're going this way because our unknown's on the left, so we have to move to the left. 10 times 7 is 70. Do the same thing to the numerator. 7 times 7 gets us to 49. So our unknown is 49, okay? All right, 12 and 13, we get to write equations, which I think are super awesome. I am gonna start by writing the question first though, okay? 9 is what percent of 20? My dog's barking in the background, can you hear him? Okay, here we go. 9 translates to our equal sign. What percent? We don't know. Let's represent it with P since we don't know what the percent is. Of means to multiply by 20. Well, in algebra, we show it just smashed together for multiplication. Okay, so now we have our equation. You can also write it like this. That's totally fine. I just tend to translate it as I see it, okay? Here's our unknown. In order to get our variable by itself, do the inverse. So the opposite of multiplying by 20 is dividing by 20, okay? 20 divided by itself is 1. I'm left with just P to represent our percent. And now we have to change 9 divided by 20 into a percent. We'll do exactly what it says, 9 divided by 20. Decimal hop, a couple zeros. 20 goes into 9, 0 times, at 0, subtract, I get 9, bring down. 20 into 90, 4 times, at 80, subtract, I get 10, bring down. 20 into 100, 5 times evenly, at 100. This is not our answer. Remember, in an equation, percents are always expressed in decimal form. This is the decimal form of our percent. it didn't ask for the decimal form. It said, what's the percent? So change this to a percent by multiplying by 100 or hopping it twice, and we get 45%. If you wrote the decimal form on a test or quiz, nope, wrong, sorry, change it to a percent. Okay, 13, 85% of what number is 10.2, okay? All right, so percents have to get changed to the decimal form before we use them in an equation. So 85% as a decimal is 85 hundredths. Means multiplication, and we don't know what number to multiply it by. So multiply it by your variable, x, okay? So that's where what number is translates to our equal sign, and then drop in your 10 and 2 tenths, okay? So from here, divide by 85 hundredths on both sides. Divide by 85 hundredths. Ew, sorry about that one. That doesn't look very fun. You can punch that into your calculator if you want. And when you divide, you will get 12. If you don't want to punch it into your calculator, that's okay. That's great. Just take 10.2, divide by 85 hundredths, hop twice, and you're going to divide 85 into 1020, and you'll see that it goes in 12 times. Okay? All right, 2 left to go over. 14. Okay, let me move you down a little bit. There we go. All right, so we're gonna find the sale or the original price. So on the number 14, the original price given is $50. I wonder what it was. Hopefully something good. The discount is 15%. It's not a very good discount. And we need to calculate the sale price, okay? So our first job is to find the dollar amount of the discount, okay? So we want to figure out, well, what is 15% of 50, okay? So let's calculate it. 15% times 50. Should we work that out together? I suppose. Okay, so we have to multiply these two together. 50 times 15%. 5 times 0 is 0. 5 times 5 is 25. Done with the 5 placeholder. 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 5 is 5. Add them up. 0, 5, 7. There were 2 numbers behind the decimal point. Hop, hop. Okay, perfect. This tells us $7.50 is the amount of the discount. Okay, so careful, that's not the sale price. If it started as $50 and it's being discounted by $7.50, we have to subtract. So 50 minus $7.50, and we get $42.50 as the sale price. Okay? One more. Number 15. Okay, so number 15, it gives us not the original price. It doesn't say the original price. That's our unknown. That's our X. Okay? It tells us that the discount is 20% and that the sale price is $75. Okay, so here's what I want you to remember, okay? The original price, consider that like you're paying 100% of what it costs. If it's being discounted by 20%, that means you paid 80% of the original price. So it's taking 20% off the price, so you're paying 80%. of what the price is. Now, we're gonna use that 80% of this amount of what number, or we could have just dropped in our X, but I wrote the word what, of what number is $75. That's the question, okay? So we're paying only 80% because it's taking off 20% from the original price. So 80% of this original price gets us to the sales price, 75 bucks. So then let's translate this. 80%, that's 8/10 is a decimal, of what number? So multiply by X is, that's our equal sign, and then drop in your 75. Now you can use an equation to solve. Divide by 8/10 on both sides. These will cancel out. Any number divided by itself is 1, so we have 1x or just x. Then you have to work out the division. I don't care if you just punch that into your calculator, no big deal to me, okay? Or you can divide it by hand, hop it once, 8 divided into 750. It's not gonna go in evenly. I know you're capable of working out that division on your own. When we do divide, we get 93.75 as our original price. Okay? All right, hope that helped. Bye.